So good afternoon, everyone. So I guess we've been invited here to share our perspectives on the issue. So I share the perspective on behalf of my members, obviously, and the work we do. I've titled my presentation, Greenbelt Growth Plan, Metrolinks, Complete Communities, and the Endangered Species Act. And there's a reason for that. We view all these pieces as working together. All these pieces as being priorities of the provincial government that our members are responsible to working through the system to, at the end result, provide complete communities to the people of Ontario and employment centers. So let me start with a statement that many of you would be surprised to hear from someone representing the Home Building Association, which is that our members support the principles of the ESA. Let's start with that because it puts all of this on the same page, on the same starting point. And from that starting point, we can work our way out to understand this perspective as to how this is all supposed to work together to create a better Ontario. I'm also thinking about this morning's comments by the Environmental Commissioner, who identified implementation as one of the real challenges around how this act works. So I think if we put that together and understand that the challenge in front of us is implementation, and with that, really the challenge is finding the solutions to make the ESA work. If we focus on that, then hopefully our perspectives on this issue start making a little more sense. So moving forward here. So that's who we represent. We've already been through that, so we'll just move on. So the provincial context. So my opportunity here is to share where our industry perspective comes from and the frustration of implementing the ESA. So our context before 2005 with a province that didn't have a strong role in land use planning. There were some protections, Oak Ridges Moraine, Niagara Escarpment, and local planning decisions had a statement in them, in the provincial policy statement that said, they shall have regard for provincial policy statement. No growth plan, no green belt, no regional transportation plan. Most of the population employment growth was greenfield or ground-oriented in nature. So prior to 2005, this is the world that we're living in. This is the world that our members are working in. This is the world that municipalities are approving projects in. This is the world where you go and you find a new home for your family, or a new employment center comes forward. And in this world, our members are working through a public planning process to achieve publicly granted approvals. Then the world changes in 2006. The provincial government brings forward the Greenbelt. Growth plan for a Greater Golden Horseshoe is established, creating a long-term natural heritage and urban structure for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Local planning decisions must be consistent with, become part of the new policy regime. The growth plan becomes a guide to demographic and employment growth, as well as infrastructure planning. And there's a shift towards intensification, building up and not out. So the province steps in and gets very much more involved in what our province is going to look like, what those communities are going to look like, providing more direction, more rigor, more vision as to how they see the province evolving and growing. And like all businesses, even home builders, there's always pushback. There's always concern. There's always questions about the uncertainty that this generates as members have sought approval, granted approvals, are moving forward with projects. And they ask the fundamental question, how do I get to the world of 2005 and bridge to the world of 2006? How do I carry over all these approvals, all these decisions? How do I make use of the infrastructure that's already been invested in, put in place? How do I deliver on a home that I sold 2 years ago, that there's a homeowner waiting for, or an employment center that will bring new jobs into a community? How do you move those things forward? And so our members in our industry has long dealt with the issue of a changing world. It's not something that's new to us. The question for us has always been the challenge around transition, the bridge that takes you from yesterday to today. So other world changes after 2006. Other regions of the province continue to grow. A new official plan in Ottawa, a new regional plan in Waterloo, and the Northern Ontario Growth Plan. Again, new pieces to the discussion, not just a GTA-centric view of what's going on, because economic prosperity and growth, real growth, continue to push forward. This region continues to attract 100,000 people every single year. And with that come the demands within the demographic shift as we have an aging population, and all those other needs that come with that. So again, the world continues to change. Then in 2006, Metrolinks is established. and they provide a structure for the big move. And the infrastructure plans that they plan that better connect all these pieces. And beyond what's here said in the big move, there are connecting pieces to places like Waterloo and other places that also get connected. So again, the industry's asked the question, how are you going to develop communities and employment centers that complement the transportation plan that we have, if I can use the term aspirations, to build someday? And so, again, the industry looks at that, retools, reorganizes, and starts looking for ways to put these pieces together in that complete communities context. And that's the world our members live in. That's what the current planning process requires to get from, as we like to say, dirt to door. And on average, we're looking at, I should say that, at minimum, we're looking at 10 years. It takes 10 years to move greenfield opportunities. Those are those opportunities in places like Markham, where they have a growing population, where the city wants to expand and welcome new residents, where the city has a responsibility through the provincial growth plan to expand and welcome new residents. So this is the process that takes greenfields, those lands that do not have servicing or capacity at this point, into the fold. And as you work your way through that, I think the term frustration comes to mind. And that's really where this conversation has to take us. This ongoing frustration on the side of our members and our industry to work through all the regulatory structure in place or all the legislation to get to the outcome we're looking for. And the province has defined that outcome already. Build up, not out. More transit-oriented friendly communities. 40% intensification within the urban cores, within the building centers. Accommodate the population, plan for it, so that when it comes, we have already planned our communities around the way that they're more transit-oriented, better use of services, better use of infrastructure, all those pieces. Work with your municipal partners. That's the one piece that sometimes gets missing here. Work with those partners because they are the first line of approvals so that their aspirations as they build a community are reflected in what you're moving forward. So this is the approvals process, the process that my members remind me of every single day as it works not just through local, regional, municipal, provincial, federal, conservation authorities, MNR, MOE, all the different pieces that come together. Again, the context that our members are working in, the complexity of the process. And if you look there's a little star at the bottom there. That is where MNR's permit lies. That's where the Endangered Species Act permit lays. At the end of a very long process, 10 years, as you get to that finish line, there's a need for a permit. So in the context of everything that's been working on for 10 or 12 years here, the frustration comes when you as a developer have worked your way through all these public pieces, have conformed to and shown compliance to provincial policy statements, infrastructure needs, municipal aspirations, if I can put it that way, and you get to the end point, and you're finally at that point now where you can register the property, start selling those homes, start building that employment center, and the permit presents itself for the first time. And in that conversation, I use the word frustration. Some of my developer members will use a different word, but I will use the word frustration. And the frustration comes from, and we all recognize this, the inability of all the pieces to work together sometimes. And we all recognize that when those pieces don't work, it's the proponent, it's the business person, it's the advocate, it's the activist who has to present how all those pieces are not working together. And the frustration that comes from that. So I go back to my earlier comment. We support the principles of the ESA. The challenge for us has been implementing it in this world. And I think as the Commissioner of the Environment said earlier this morning, implementation seems to be where we get ourselves tied up into knots because we're spending less time looking for solutions, in my opinion, and more time looking for blame. More time looking for leave it as it is. And the answer back to that, in our members' world, they can't work in that environment. The environment has been preset. The process has been followed. Approvals have been granted. Public meetings have been dealt with. And it's time to sort of look for solutions. So as we work through this process, we refer to the ESA overall benefit permit as the end of process permit. So you get to the end of whatever you need to accomplish, and then the permit pops up. And the question then becomes, well, how do I bridge what I've already successfully secure through a public process to your permit. And I think that's where all the frustration comes from, because there are no clear answers there. So this is where we are today. Frustration with the practical implementation of the ESA. A lack of integration and respect for publicly earned approvals. Industry prepared to work with legislation to protect species at risk and provide opportunities to enhance SAR habitat. But improvements are required. Practical solutions require for legislation to work effectively and efficiently for all stakeholders. And I go back to this morning's comments by the Commissioner of the Environment, who laid out 6 or 7 examples there and pointed out, we lost an opportunity here because we were afraid to make a decision or think of it in a different way. And I guess, I work with a group of members who they're builders. They build things. They want to build things. And part of the building process is a collaboration. My background is a residential framer, so I spend my days framing new homes. But in constructing a new home, it's a collaboration between 35, 40 different trades, people coming together working for an outcome. And the challenge around this is that I have members who are builders. They want to collaborate, they want to solve problems. They're not afraid to solve problems. But they search for partners who are in the same outcome game. Sometimes those partners are municipalities. Sometimes those municipalities share the same problem. That municipality needs that road to make its way through, to make the connection for the broader community. They need that new trunk service. They need that new bridge. Sometimes they're a part of the solution. Sometimes the solution is an NGO who's looking for funding to move forward on a trust idea or a grant application. But the point is that through collaboration, we can find solutions. And so the members are looking for those opportunities, with the point being that we're all seeking the same outcome, to make the act work. But we can't do that in an environment where we forget about what we've accomplished yesterday. Again, going back to the theme of transition and creating that bridge. So, the M&R regulatory proposals. The transition proposals at the draft are suggested to be at the draft plan of subdivision level. And really what all this really says is that this gets us on our way, right? There is no perfect solution for anyone, nor should anyone expect government to ever provide a perfect solution, because that simply won't come our way. But in an environment of incremental improvement, learning from the experiences of the last 5 years, identifying opportunities, searching for collaboration, and getting to the outcome, in my view, we can make this work. But there has to be a greater understanding, I think, of all the differing perspectives that come to this conversation, all the differing pressure points that we're feeling on behalf of our members, on behalf of community groups, NGOs, ENGOs, et cetera, et cetera. We all have different pressure points. But I think when I go back to the Commissioner's comments this morning, I think what I heard from him more and more was, in an environment like this where implementation is the key to making this successful, we all have to be willing to collaborate. And some of that is leadership required on the part of the landowners, on the part of the farmers, on the part of M&R, on the part of other groups. But if we all have a better understanding of where we're coming from and why people fight for whatever they fight for in the process, we'll probably get to a better place at the end of it, looking for an outcome that works for everyone. So, our thoughts here is that, on the regulatory package that's before the government, it's working its way through, whatever that might mean, we need these things to move forward. Because moving them forward means that we are providing transition that gets us from yesterday to today. It means it also creates an environment where there can be greater collaboration and greater opportunities. And we call on government to provide leadership all the time, but we also provide on fellow stakeholders to provide the leadership as well, to open themselves up to conversations that they may be uncomfortable with from the past world before 2005. But 2006, the world did change. And we all have to work together to figure out how those pieces work. So this is all the great text that staff will give you to prepare as you get up to a presentation. I think what I really want to focus on is some of the basic facts here. This is a growth area, 100,000 people every year coming to the region, tremendous employment opportunities coming forward. And so we have to remember that as we think about the comprehensive package that we're working on. The ESA works within the context of broader pieces. And we have to find a way to make all these pieces complement each other. Whether it's the Planning Act, Provincial Policy Statement, Greenbelt, Growth Plan, Metro Links, on and on and on. What's important to remember sometimes is that all these developments, as they move their way forward, they do require environmental assessments. They do require master environmental servicing plans or other major environmental studies. It's part of the requirement. It's also important to understand that as you move greenfield development through a public development process, there are going to be natural land takeout for sensitive lands. And that's going to create opportunity for linkages. And that creates the opportunity for opportunities. You know, I also serve on the Ontario Biodiversity Council, and we have these conversations around that council. And we talk about where are the opportunities? They're there right in front of us. We're afraid to act on them. We're afraid to take that leadership role. And we're all afraid because we're all waiting for someone to say no. But we shouldn't be satisfied with the no. The no doesn't get us to a better place. It gets us back to where we started. And in my life, it gets back to a conversation that starts with the world changed in 2006. Great. So I've been given 2 minutes. Great. So perfect timing. So I guess my message to the group here and our perspective on this issue is this. The industry is not afraid of the ESA. The ESA is another piece of the world that's changed. Our members will work our way through that. The challenge for the industry is we sit on previously granted approvals, decisions that have been made, infrastructure that's been invested, municipal finance agreements in place. And we are challenged to figure out how do we bridge from that world into this world. And in the case of the ESA, the challenge for us is not like the world just changed in 2006. The world changes every time the list changes, right? Every time you add another group of species to the list, the world has changed again. So finding a way to bridge us from each list to each planning reality provides us with an opportunity to create opportunities for collaboration. And so I guess my perspective on this is that there are plenty of good outcomes to come forward, but we have to seek out those opportunities and take advantage of them. Thank you very much.